So we're back here. I know it's been a while since we were releasing a piece of content here on YouTube. There's been issues with YouTube banning our account for things which I'm sure all of you would agree is complete and utter BS if we explained entirely what went on. But we kind of have another video that explored that. What we're going to talk about here today is how vaccine mandates, specifically when it comes to corporations, employment, all that sort of stuff, how it's creating gray areas where people are having trouble finding out, hey, am I being let go because of a vaccine mandate? Am I losing my job because of something else that's related to the vaccine mandate, but the employer can't come out and directly say that? We're seeing this happen a lot. We've been getting reports of this from all over. People directly losing their job because of the vaccine mandate, and then people who were losing their job for no reason, no cause whatsoever. But the only thing is that they're unvaccinated. So to explore this a little more deeply, we're going to be talking to and going through the story of Nicole Murphy. Welcome, Nicole. Why don't we start by you talking a little bit about how your situation unfolded related to this subject?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Joe. So I was the media operations manager at the students' newspaper and media center for NAIT, which is a college out of Alberta, since 2017. They brought me in to essentially build this team and help guide the students to create content and to have a media center. And within a few weeks, we had a team of 10 and different contributors. So throughout the 4 years I was there, the students paper and media center was continually growing. We had people interested in being a part of the team, and I worked passionately to guide these students into creating good content and becoming media professionals. Of course, we know COVID hits, and over the last couple years, about the last year and a half, I started questioning things. I started looking into things deeper. I'm a journalist at heart, and things just weren't adding up. So a couple months ago, actually in June, I started speaking out saying, hey, I care about people. I want to look into this further. I'm questioning, certain things like lockdowns and the efficiency of how masks are used, and questioning, what really is helping keep people healthy. That caused a bit of controversy. And from that point on, I knew that people would be talking and know where I stand on what I'm thinking about.
Just to be clear here, were you looking into this stuff and talking about this more deeply at the newspaper level, or was this more so personally outside of work?
It was completely personal. I made it very clear to the students that I don't need them to believe what I believe or even to look into what I'm looking into. My job was to inspire them and teach them how to look into what they're interested in. So it was at a personal level and on my personal Instagram and social media accounts.
So when you say that people at the college started to, I guess, realize kind of what your stance was, this was mainly what they saw on social media.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how would you describe like the way, like I've seen some of your posts, but just to sort of reiterate it, like how would you describe the way you were going about this on social media? Like what type of vibe was there to your posts?
Um, I'd like to think curious, exploratory. There was a clear, I was clearly questioning the vaccination. We'll
Yeah,
just get that out there. The one that has been created for COVID.
yeah.
Um, so there was a lot of stuff where that's concerned, and I was questioning how media is writing about this and exploring these topics. Um, those are the two main things that I was kind of digging into, but it was curious, and it was me. I was seeking out interviews with people and looking into things in a curious way.
Right. Yeah, I recall seeing some of your posts with regards to just, trying to look into some scientists, look into some doctors who had different ideas and exploring it again very much from a journalistic point of view. Was there anything in your college or in your school that would have outlined like, hey, as a person working for us here, you can or cannot say this kind of thing outside of work? Was there anything around that?
Um, no, no, else I think that they would have brought that up. This is a side note. So I worked for the college and for the Students Association. They're two different companies. Um, I actually was talked to by HR, and I said, "Hey, did you look at my social media? Is there anything going on?" And they didn't have anything. So I clarified that with them.
Okay, perfect. So what happened next? You started to realize like your stance was known amongst some of the fellow employees and stuff like that. What happened after that?
Um, I knew it was going to be pretty public when I came out doing that. It's a news program, it's news, so it spreads fast. Um, I noticed some people like unfriending me. I noticed like I just had a feeling. I noticed some things and some comments on my work that like it sucks. It sucks to have people attacking you, but maybe that's an exaggeration. It sucks to have people coming at you and there's a real feeling of uh um like not being pleased with you. So like some things like that started happening, but uh there wasn't really any other interactions or signs. It was just more me intuitively knowing that people were not pleased.
Right, right. And then so I guess this led to eventually you being terminated. And I guess, can you explain some of the details behind that?
So I was terminated without cause from my job on a Monday. Um, the previous week, I had had a chat with HR about verifying my vaccination status, and I said that I didn't feel comfortable doing that. And they said they would send me papers to go through a process for um, how to how to go about that. And I never got. I don't think I got those papers. I'm not sure. But essentially, I was fired on Monday without cause.
Right. So to be clear, the college was saying we want to know what your vaccination status is. You said I'm not comfortable with relaying that information, and then they said okay, no problem. We'll send you some papers around reasonable accommodation, aka
Yes.
medical exemption, that sort of stuff. And then you're not sure if you received those papers, but you were terminated not long after that anyway.
Yeah, and to clarify, even though Nate created a vaccine mandate, the school newspaper and my position was completely online. So for this semester anyway, it was completely online and I had no need to be on campus.
Would you say that you had a good relationship with them leading up to this point? Like there was no reason why you would have been let go other than something like this?
100%. I had an amazing relationship. There's amazing people who work at the Students Association, and consistently the paper and the Student Media Center was getting better. We were expanding on different projects. And I had great relationships with all of them.
And so, from what I understand, they sent you a document afterwards, basically saying, hey, if you sign this document, we will give you X amount of dollars. Um, and this basically means that you can't talk about this, why you were let go, you can't reveal any information, you can't sue us, anything like that. How did you feel about that document?
Um, like I've heard it's pretty standard to have that kind of document when you're fired without cause, and I know that there's been lots of people let go with the school who've signed documents like that. So I wasn't surprised by the document. It's just it wasn't my jam.
Right.
I'm a journalist, right? So I have to role model to my students more than anybody what it means to, be able to talk about stories and look at things honestly. So for me, it just didn't seem like a right fit.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, what led, in your perspective, to vaccine hesitancy? We know you were looking at personal info or at information, trying to get a deeper perspective on what was going on. But what else led to you being hesitant about the vaccine?
I talk about this a lot. The main thing as to why I'm hesitant with this vaccination is because how I was taught and where I excel in media is finding people whose stories are not being told and listening to them. And I understand that it's hard to measure what's rare and not rare when you're doing that because you're going into someone's story. But I heard the same story over and over and over again with people who've been vaccine injured. And it's a very clear pattern. Usually, with those who've been neurologically damaged, they're told that they have anxiety, that it's not related to the vaccination. And they're all having the same symptoms. They're all having the same thing going on. And doctors are denying it. And so that was a story that led me to be hesitant. If I would have talked to people who were injured by the vaccination and they said, yeah, it's been acknowledged by Pfizer or Moderna or the government or the doctors, I'm being taken care of, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you right now because that wouldn't be a story then. in the same way. That wouldn't cause me to have my spidey senses go like something else is going on here. People aren't being taken care of.
Right. And I understand you have a couple people close to you that are genetically related, but you don't want to reveal the full details, that have been injured by this vaccine severely and perhaps with permanent damage. Do you care to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. It's funny because I was vaccine hesitant before this, but it has come out that two people that are very close to me have had adverse reactions. And the funny thing is, the first thing I thought about afterwards, like, I can't talk about this because people aren't going to believe that I'm telling the truth, right? Because what are the chances that the person that's been talking out about it has two people very close to them that have vaccine injury? Well, that's the case. And one is neurological. It's Bell's palsy, which has the potential to clear up, but it has been diagnosed as severe Bell's palsy and acknowledged as a vaccine injury. And the other person had COVID in December and had mild symptoms around smell and taste that have been exaggerated after their second vaccination. And they honestly have been, I don't know, for lack of they've changed their mind on everything because of their experience, because they went to the doctor and the doctor denied it having any connection with the vaccination, but they know they know what they were like before and after, and the experiences they had. They even told me recently, right after, there was pulsating in their head.
So this is interesting because going to the smell and the taste case, what we've seen a lot, and again, this doesn't go reported enough, but what we've seen a lot is that a lot of the same unintended consequences of actually getting COVID, aka you can have heart inflammation, you can have stroke, you can have heart attack from just getting natural COVID, are the same sort of adverse reactions we're seeing from the vaccine, right? So someone might have a very mild case, is what it sounds like, of losing smell and taste through the natural infection. It sort of wanes off, but they did have some long haul COVID symptoms where, that smell and taste was not fully there. And then now after full vaccination, that has exacerbated dramatically those symptoms. And from what I understand, they're still dealing with that, but the physician themselves said that it's not related to the vaccine at all.
Yeah. And that's what caused them to reach out to me and say, hey, Nicole, what do you think I can do about this? Because I'm not getting answers from the medical system. And I've had to go into the research I've been doing to give them ways to help deal with it. So essentially, with one person, there's no acknowledgement that it's a vaccine injury. And often when they tell people about their vaccine injury, it's downplayed as if, well, at least you didn't get COVID, but this person has had both. And they straight up say, COVID was way easier than this. And then the other person, there was acknowledgement that it was vaccine injury.
Yeah, and I do understand there was some discussion between the doctor and the nurse at the time as to whether or not this should be reported as a vaccine injury.
So for the Bell's palsy, and now this is a little bit through a story of one person. So it's been told to me that there was some kind of discussion around with the doctors and nurses whether or not it should be reported as an adverse reaction.
Yeah. And do you think it was reported, or is there any information about whether it was reported as a vaccine injury?
I'm not sure, and maybe I should look into how to follow up on that. But I'm not sure. The person I know said no, report it. But I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how to check that.
Yeah, and from what I understand, this is one of the things that's come up a lot is the discussion around how much work it is at the doctor's office, who's already really busy, to make these reports. They take anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes to fill out these reports. So the often question that we bring up here is there a lot more of these issues going on that are going unacknowledged by doctors, but that are also, maybe the doctor acknowledges it but doesn't have the time nor the willingness to actually make the report. I know here in Canada they're still saying that the vaccine has caused 0 deaths. However, I know several people just in Canada, even down the street from me, 17-year-old just recently died after getting his COVID, Pfizer vaccine. So it's interesting because we're being told by the government there's no deaths. Meanwhile, I know several people who have died. And so, or I know of, right? Like very clearly, I've looked into these stories, I've spoken to people. So this is a serious challenge when dealing with this stuff. And I think this is kind of when you alluded to the story aspect and going into the story aspect of this is what's important. I got to bring it back to this. You were let go. We don't know exactly why, but you were working in the media side of it. Basically, the people who ran the school newspaper were vaccine hesitant, and the student association decided to let them go. For what reason do we not know? But in other forms of media, right, we're seeing people who are unvaccinated also be pushed into, you stay over here. Maybe you shouldn't be part of our media. Are we seeing how media is controlled in some way, shape, or form here?
Totally. This was actually so fascinating for me. I want to make a note. I mean, I could be wrong, so I'm going to say 99%, but at a 99%, I am confident that the students that worked with me felt freedom to write what they wanted to write, even if they disagreed with what I believe.
Yeah.
Mostly because I said that on multiple occasions, and mostly because I literally had debates with students that were wonderful discussions. I wouldn't even say debates about how we disagree.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that they would feel comfortable exploring any ideas right now with the student governance coming in, firing the entire management team in one day. Obviously, one is coined as like not renewing the contract, but the people who led the paper are now gone. The people who led the media are now gone. And it's a student governance that's in charge. And that's just a micro expression of what's happening in mainstream media.
Yeah.
People in media are socially aware enough to know, and most people are, what you're allowed to talk about and what you're not allowed to talk about right now.
Yeah.
So if someone's afraid of losing their job, how do they really explore what maybe needs to be explored?
Absolutely. That's very well said. And I think that's one of the big challenges here with regards to media is the average person. We say this all the time. I've tested this with a lot of people that very much just watch mainstream media. I've asked them a lot of questions, and they're just not aware of the vast majority of narrative changing objective facts. So we're not talking about analysis. We're not talking about opinions. We're talking about facts that are objectively factual, and they change the entire narrative about what's going on. And these people are just completely unaware of that these are facts within this story that we call COVID-19 and the pandemic. And it's made it, you have to ask the question, well, how are only these facts coming through? And it's exactly what you're talking about. These journalists are sort of trapped in not being able to say a lot of stuff. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating to hear your story and to explore the possibilities and also understand the state of media right now. Any other thoughts or anecdotes on what you've heard as a media professional, what's happening in media right now?
Yeah, I will say that I know of people who are quite offended by me speaking out against what's happening in media, who are also in media, who are also in instructor roles. And what I want to say is, if we don't recognize the issues in media at a college level, how do we help make it better? If we just pretend like everything's fine, and it is not fine, there's objective truths I could point out why it's not okay right now. Um, I don't see me questioning the state of media as not in alignment to teaching at a college. In fact, I would hope that people who are teaching at a college would have the courage to question media so they can help students grow into media professionals that have integrity and are able to do things that are courageous.
Yeah. Some of the core values here at the Pulse. That's it.
Sure.
That's all. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. And thanks so much for joining our team here at the Pulse. As the fallout of all this sort of stuff, it's been an exciting addition. And it'll be interesting to explore more of this if you find out any more of those details with regards to what took place there and whether things were reported and all that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.